Hey people, what's up? Today I'm going to be cooking up a house track from scratch. I know it's been a hot minute since I've done some house, but a lot of people have been asking, so here we go. This project file is going to be available on my Ko-fi if you want to pick it up. It's going to have all of the instruments that I'll be creating, all of the samples. It's mixed, it's mastered, ready to go. And I'm going to try and keep this as beginner friendly as possible and include some sound design, include some general tips, and yeah, let's hop on into Ableton and make some music. All right, brand new project file. First thing I want to do is change my key. And normally I like to pick somewhere between like F and A because that's usually kind of the sweet spot for making basses for EDM type music. I'm going to do G sharp, and heaven forbid I make a song in major and make it sound happy. So we got to change that to minor. And let's up the tempo from 120. Let's do like 124. Perfect. So I'm going to start with just a drone. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-M, and let's click on, let's see, let's try G2 for now. I'm going to hit legato so it just spans this whole length. So let's pop this open, and I'm going to grab wavetable. So let's do that, and this is just going to be a really, really simple sound. Do somewhere like this. Let's bring the filter back. So let's grab a chorus. Just give it a little bit of movement and depth. And let's add a little bit of unison too. Okay. And let's put some reverb on there as well. I tend to use hybrid reverb. I think it sounds better than just the stock Ableton reverb. So let's just do something like that. And we have a drone. Next, I'm going to start adding some drums just to get a feel for the rhythm. So again, Control-Shift-M. And I have this kick that I've already loaded into a drum sampler. When you're first starting out a house track or an EDM track, you kind of want to think what kind of track you're going to make. Is it going to be more deep house? Is it going to be dance or hard style? And depending on that, your kick may be punchier or clickier, like this one, or it could also be a deeper kick if you're doing like a softer type of house. So this one I want it to be a little bit punchy. So let's come on in here, and we're just going to do it on C3 and every quarter note, just like this. I'm going to punch that velocity all the way up. Select all of those and Control D to just duplicate that across. And let's take the volume down a little bit. And same with the clap. I just loaded that into a drum rack. And a lot of times I just have a drum rack loaded automatically on here because I like to sometimes layer things, and it's much easier than just having multiple tracks. But for now, I'm just going to stick with this one. So again, Control-Shift-M. And every 2 and 4, we're going to have that clap hit. So let's duplicate that across there. And of course, we need an open hi-hat on those offbeats. So again, Control-Shift-M, which is one of my favorite Ableton shortcuts here. And offbeat hi-hat is going to go, if you have it on set on 16ths, it's going to be that third one on every quarter note section here. So let's do that. And let's just mess around with this a little bit because I like the open hi-hat to be a little bit shorter. So we can mess around with this hold and decay a little bit. So you can hear, if we take this down, it's kind of fading this out a little bit. And you can even fine tune it more with this decay as well. So I think somewhere about there sounds good. And let's send that clap and that hi-hat to that reverb that we have in here. So those 3 elements are kind of our basic building blocks for house or EDM beats. So we have that 4 on the floor kick, the clap on every 2 and 4, and that offbeat hi-hat. So now you can kind of be a little bit more creative, and you can find some top loops or some percussion and add them kind of in different areas to create some more groove. So personally, I like to use loops a lot of the time for like shakers and percussion and stuff like that, just because it's so easy to pop in and I like to focus more on melodic stuff. So I found this top loop that I really like. And of course we can come in here, and if you want, you can change this warping type to the single arrow. And this is basically like what we were doing with that hi-hat, where you're adjusting how long the transient and how long it's going to be held. So you can take this down just to tighten it up a little bit. And same deal with this shaker that I'm going to put in here as well. So I'm going to come in and just take this down a little bit. So the last thing to finish these drums off, I want to add just kind of an accent percussion. So I found this. And I don't really like this section here. So what I'm going to do is Control E, and that will cut that, and I can just delete it. So I just have this now, and I'm going to move this to here. I think that sounds good. And I'm going to have that come in like every 2 bars. So let's select this entire region that I want to duplicate, and we'll hit Control D, and that will do that. And so now we have all these tiny little pieces, and to make this easier to work with, we can just select this entire region, and I'm going to hit Control J, and that is called consolidating. And what that's going to do is turn this into one nice big piece, so now it's the same length as all the rest. Okay, now let's start getting some of the melodic stuff going. So I'm going to use this empty MIDI track, and let's grab another wavetable. And let's make kind of a pluck. So I'm going to drag this up to a sawtooth, and let's change this amplitude envelope to something more like this. So let's drag that back a little bit. Let's up the decay just a tad. So let's go ahead and drag this amplitude envelope. So if we come in here to the matrix, we can map things to different things, which is always fun. So you can click on the thing that you want to map, and we want to use that amplitude envelope. So let's drag this up. So you can see what that's doing there. I don't want it quite that pronounced. And let's maybe change this to a 24 dB cutoff. That sounds pretty good. I'm going to change this to a different filter type so we can add a little bit of drive and up the resonance just a little bit. Next, let's go ahead and add some delay. So let's pop that on there. So that's a little heavy. Let's take this down. Maybe somewhere like that. And then I'm going to unlink these. And let's add just a little bit of saturation as well. Not that much. Not that much. And let's draw in a pattern. So I kind of am thinking... So we're kind of going to play off that G sharp minor chord. So let's come up with some rhythm here. So right now I'm on 16th notes. So let's see how this sounds. Let's move this here maybe. Okay, I actually like that. So let's go ahead and copy this over. We'll have that repeat for 4 bars. And then I want it to change. Let's copy this one more time. I think I'm going to keep the B and the D sharp playing, and let's move this down to maybe, let's see, the E. Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and Control D that across for this. And this is kind of functioning as our ARP, which is very common in EDM music and house music. And it's usually just kind of something that's playing along the same lines as your chords. With that, we can start with our bass line now. So again, I'm going to grab a wavetable. I just love wavetable. It's just super intuitive to use, and I think it sounds great. So for this bass line, I'm just going to use 2 sawtooth waves here. Let's drag those up. Let's drag the filter down, and again, change that to a 24 so it's a steeper cutoff. I'm going to bring this up so that it's fully sustained. Let's bring this back just a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this. So let's draw in our G sharp here. So I'm going to hit the headphone icon, So now I can actually hear when I put notes in. So I think that's actually a good range for this. Let's make this just a little bigger here. And I'm going to drag this across so it's playing the full 4 bars here. And then I can grab this note if I hold Control. And I can do whatever I want with it. I'm going to drag it. It's getting a little low there. I might take it up the octave. I think that might translate a little bit better. Let's add a little bit of unison to this just to give it a little bit of depth. Make it a little bit wider. I don't want a whole lot. Something like that. And let's just change this to mono as well. Grab a saturator real quick and throw that on there. And let's change it to the bass shaper. And let's just do a little bit, maybe like 2. Give it a little bit of meat. Next really important thing is adding some sidechain. So let's go ahead. I almost just typed in sidechain. All right, compressor. We want just a compressor. And I'm going to drop that on here. And there are lots of plugins. I love Duck by Devious Machines. That's usually what I use, but I know not everyone has that. So you can also use a compressor to sidechain things. And all sidechain does is it pushes the volume down. It ducks the volume. And you can link it to a certain thing. Usually it's the kick. So if you grab this compressor, you can pop this little triangle open and you have the sidechain option. And you get to choose where it comes from. So audio from, and since we have already labeled everything, which you should definitely do, label all your stuff, is pick the kick. And now, if we check out this bass, we can see that kick coming in. And you can make this really extreme. That's too much. You kind of just want a little bit. And so now everything is just kind of breathing with the kick. So I'm going to copy this and let's paste it on pretty much everything so far. Let's paste it here. And maybe you don't want the same amount on every single thing. So you can kind of dial this into how you want it to sound. All right, cool. Next, I want to add another melodic element. So for this one, I want to create kind of like a higher pitched sound that's going to kind of stand out, because everything else right now is kind of like lower to mid range. So I usually like my melodies to be in the higher frequencies so that they're easier to stand out. So I'm going to use almost a square wave here. So let's pull this back. And again, I'm going to use something that I can get a little bit of drive. Let's pull the resonance up. And let's make this a pluckier sound. So let's pull this back like all the way to 0. I think is good. And again, I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to map the amplitude envelope to the frequency here. So I also want to add a higher end to this as well. So let's come over here to the second oscillator. I'm going to turn that on. And let's come to the instruments. So I think that one's cool. And I'm going to use an LFO to filter through some of these just to give it a little bit more variation when we're playing the notes. So let's come to LFO 1. And I'm going to take the rate down a little bit, and let's take the amount down too. And let's come into the matrix. So we have LFO 1, and we want to map it to this thing here, which is the oscillator 2 position. So I'm going to drag this up a little bit. And I actually like to have it kind of free moving, because right now you can see it's only starting from this position every time I hit a note. So if we come back in here, we can change this, take this R off so it's not a retrigger. So now it's just like free moving. All right, that sounds good. Let's grab echo for this one. So let's see here. We're going to take this down a little bit. And then let's up the feedback a little bit. And up the reverb on those echoes. And lastly, I want to add some reverb right on the channel for this one. So again, I'm going to grab hybrid reverb here. And let's change this to 100% on the algorithmic side. And I'm going to take this down to about 33%. And I'm going to go ahead and play in a melody with this, and we can fine tune it after. All right, cool. I'm going to quantize that. I don't want it to be 100% because I feel like it's going to sound a little too robotic. So let's come in here to the quantize settings, and I'm going to change it from 100% down to about like 77. And I think that's probably good. So something that I want to change real quick, I want to come into echo here. And if you open this character section, it has a ducking option, which means that anytime the main signal is coming in, it's going to duck the echoes. And it's just going to help with this so that the echo kind of raises in volume when the main notes aren't playing. And they'll make it sound a lot less cluttered. Okay, the last thing I want to add before I start thinking about arranging this are some like really epic chords. So I'm going to insert a MIDI track, and I'm going to grab Vital this time. Bet you thought it was going to be Wavetable, didn't you? All right, Vital. I've started using this because everybody yelled at me that I should be using Vital, so it's actually pretty good. I like it. So let's come in here to basic shapes, and I'm going to do a sawtooth because like everything uses a sawtooth. So I'm just going to get a basic sound for now, kind of like a pad. So let's pull this like that and turn on the filter, and let's take the resonance down, and that is going to filter 1. Good. Let's up the unison. Let's see how that sounds right now. Maybe like 7 voices, and take it down just a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and add some chords here, and then we can mess with the sound a little bit more. This is where scale mode can come in really handy. So I'm going to hit scale, and those are literally just the notes in my scale. Let's change these to maybe like 1 bar. So I definitely want to start with that G minor chord, and I hit B here to change this into a pencil. You can just draw in notes. So let's do the G sharp and the D sharp. And then let's do so we got some really nice tension happening there. And let's drag that across for 2 bars. And then I'm going to have these notes change. So let's maybe take them down to the F. And I'm going to drag these across actually so these can stay. So now we have that E. So what I want to do is really dig into that chord. So we're going to have this come down to the E. And if we know our E chord, it's going to have the B as the 5th. So let's have that as well. And then we can have probably these 2 continue through. And let's see how that sounds. And then let's come into the effects here. So I've added a chorus. We're going to add this multi-band compressor, which is really helping bring out that noise in the top end. a delay just to kind of wash it out a little bit more, and some reverb. And those are really the basic pieces that I want to start for arranging. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of the arrangement. So what I like to do is I take all of this and I'm going to click right at bar 1 and hit Control I. And I like to insert time. So let's just say like 24 bars to start with. So it's just going to push everything over to here. And then I like to start dragging things back that I know I want to start with. So I'm going to hold Control. I'll drag the kick back. Let's take our kind of plucky ARP and our drone. And maybe we'll have the bass come in around here. And then let's maybe have this top loop come back too. So one thing we can start doing is adding some automation just to give this a little bit more life and make it a little less boring. So I'm going to start with this pluck. And let's come to the frequency on this. And let's start a little bit lower. And we'll have it kind of gradually build. And we can do similar things, especially for the intro here on this kick. So I'm going to automate this EQ8. So it has a low cut. So we're kind of keeping that bassy, nice hitting kick for when we drop into the main section here. So let's go ahead and automate this on off button. So maybe around here, we'll have it turn off. And then we can automate this frequency. So we'll have this gradually come up. So it's pulling more and more of it out. So I don't want the chords to come in this soon. Let's move these back. This I want to save for a little bit later too. So let's just move those back. Here we definitely need some sort of like riser. And we have this impact sound here for when it hits. What I want to do is I want to get rid of everything except for that pluck right before we get into this main kind of drop section. So I'm just selecting all of this. I just want this da 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 right before it drops in. So select the sections that you want. I'm hitting 0 and it's just going to mute them. So you can listen to how this sounds when it's just that playing. Okay, so I spent just a little more time working on this, and this is the final project file that is on my Ko-fi right now. So I went through and we have all of the same automation happening here in the beginning, so everything is kind of building up. And I added a few more sweeps and impacts, kind of leading into our main melody. And then here, the chords don't really come in until the breakdown, and kind of instead of having them come in abruptly out of nowhere, I just resampled the chords into an audio track. And this just gives you a lot more leeway in terms of fading and volume control. So I'm using the fades on this clip as well as some automation using a utility for the volume. So you can see that it's just gradually introducing it here. And along with those risers, it just is a really, really nice transition. And here we're just reintroducing things slowly. So we bring the bass in, the clap, just the top loop. And then I'm doing the exact same thing I did with this section at the beginning where we're dropping everything out except for just this marimba. So before we drop into like kind of the final big section here, everything drops out here for this. that about does it for this track. If you would like to grab this project file and dive a little bit deeper into the automation and the mixing and all that kind of stuff, it is available on my Ko-fi page, and it's a great way to support the channel, and I really, really appreciate it. Other than that, I will be back again with more music very, very soon. So until then, take care.